Hello, and welcome to the HarperCollins Children's Books Winter 2024 Librarian Preview. I'm Sarah Hunter, Books for Youth and Graphic Novels Editor at Booklist. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. Links to today's slide presentation and title list were included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the links located there. You can also download the slides and title list by copying the URL on this screen into your web browser. If you have any trouble, please contact us at webinars@booklistonline.com. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have questions or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. Booklist offers closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable captions on your screen, please look for and click the Captions icon on the toolbar mentioned earlier. From there, you can select Show or Hide Captions from the menu that appears. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of the captions at any time by selecting Subtitle Settings. And finally, Booklist expects all participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness. Anyone who violates this standard of behavior, including engaging in any form of harassment, may, at the discretion of organizers, be immediately removed. We have a wonderful program today, so without further ado, I'll pass things off to Patty Rosati and the HarperStax team. Take it away, Patty.
Thank you, Sarah, and welcome everyone to the HarperCollins Books Winter 2024 Librarian Preview. It is Friday, which is my favorite day. It is the fall, my favorite season, and there's nothing I'd rather do this afternoon than share books with all of you, along with three amazingly talented creators. Today we have with us Brendan Wenzel, Catherine Applegate, and debut author Tony Keith Jr., all who will tell you about their upcoming books. Some of my colleagues and I will jump in throughout to tell you about other key titles that we'll be publishing early next year that I think you should add to your shelves. A few tips before we start. We sent out a spreadsheet of the titles we'll be presenting before this webinar. Please feel free to use that to take notes about the books that you hear today. Also, you can request downloads to all of the titles that we talk about from both NetGalley and Edelweiss. The full picture book PDFs are on Edelweiss only, and you can immediately access them by clicking the links on each entry. And then speaking of Edelweiss, please do spend a little time with the catalog there. You'll not only see more details about today's books, but there are many, many more great books coming from Harper early next year that we just don't have time to present today, but that I think are worth your attention. So the seasonal catalog is linked at the end of this presentation, I believe. Okay, are we ready? Let's get to it with our first guest presenter, Brendan Wenzel. Brendan is a Caldecott Honor-winning illustrator with a great affection for trees and all of the furry, feathered, and scaly things that you can find in them. He's traveled to jungles, savannas, and everything in between in search of fascinating animals. An avid conservationist who collaborates with groups working to protect the wild places and the creatures that live there, Brendan brings his incredible passion and talent to Solar Bear, written by Beth Ferry. This is a lyrical call to action on the climate crisis and the danger it poses to various species. Features a group of bears who ultimately invite the readers to join their cause. I cannot wait to hear more about his work on this luminous book. Won't you please help me welcome Brendan Wenzel?
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Patty. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for being here. It's a real honor to spend the afternoon with you and talk a little bit about Solar Bear. So I am going to jump over into screen sharing mode here. And I'm terrible with technology, so let's just all keep our fingers crossed this works. All right. So I've been very fortunate in my life to have, on occasion, been able to travel to truly wild places. And the feeling that I get when I'm in the Masai Mara or on the Osa Peninsula in Costa Rica is like unlike anything that I experience any other time in my life. I could write 100 books on what it is like to experience this. But I think for now, I will just say I think it's something that every human being has the absolute right to experience, to be in just one of these absolutely wild places. Of course, one of my passions is talking to kids about conservation and about where we are with our planet at this current very difficult moment. And very commonly, I come across these terms that are new to me, but I think are feel really important, but and would also be really, really wonderful to be able to communicate to young readers. But they have these sort of very difficult names like environmental generational amnesia, in which I'm sure some of you are kind of falling asleep in your chairs just hearing that right now. But with a term like environmental generational amnesia, it's, you know, when you look at it graphically, it's very, very, very easy to wrap your mind around. And this term basically means that every new generation accepts the degraded environment that they're born into as their baseline. So here we have this, you know, this grandmother looking at this environment with their grandchild, and now we're looking at it through the grandparent as a child's eyes. And so, you know, you never really know what you're missing because you never get to see it and you never get to feel it for yourself. And this was something that I was thinking about all the time, like every single morning a few years ago, when into my inbox popped this incredible manuscript by the wonderful Beth Ferry. And what I would love to do is just quickly read through the manuscript of Solar Bear, because as an illustrator, it's always fun to read a manuscript before there are images. And I always like to give folks the opportunity to kind of hear a manuscript and then kind of imagine what they would do with it before kind of going on the brief journey of what I sort of settled on. So the text to Solar Bear reads, "I am a mighty solar bear, no ordinary polar bear, because I can shine and I can glow brighter than the Arctic snow. Today I leave my northern pole to start a solar bear patrol with bears from south and bears from north. Together we will venture forth to tell a tale that's hard to hear, to tell it while we still are here, before we all just disappear. Our light will shine on what is wrong, on disappearing orca song, on ivory tusks and rhino horns, on tiny turtles yet not yet born, on wombat sloths and manatees, on coral reefs and chimpanzees." I'm sorry, I have the windows. I promised you I was bad at tech. Okay, I have windows from everybody landing on my screen, so I cannot read the text. But just give me one moment, please. See if I can take care of this. Sorry, I'm just going to do this for one moment. "On wombat sloths and manatees, on coral reefs and chimpanzees, on pangolins with pinecone scales, orangutans and humpback whales, on bees and trees and butterflies, on living things of every size. Our light will be a lion's roar, too loud for you to just ignore, for those of us who have no voice, to those of you who have a choice. We'll show you that our paths are linked. As you expand, we go extinct. We'll come to meet each of your friends, to tell you how the story ends, to show you how the future looks when creatures live nowhere but books. We'll ask you for your mighty roar to show us we're worth fighting for, so we won't worry anymore. We cannot fight this fight alone. We cannot do it on our own. The earth is yours and mine, so dare to care, to glow, to shine. Because if you would and when you did, then you would be a solar kid, and you will change the world I know, and I can rest safe in the snow." So after reading that text, the very first thing that I thought of, besides I would really love to illustrate this book, was of Charles Dickens' classic story, The Christmas Carol, and about the three ghosts who come to visit the now famous Ebenezer Scrooge, who are, of course, the ghosts of Christmas past, the ghosts of Christmas present, and the ghosts of Christmas future. And I started thinking about environmental generational amnesia and that sort of that longer timeline. And this character of Solar Bear immediately jumped out at me as this sort of incredible, sort of ethereal being coming from this other realm to talk to the young reader in this book about, you know, what was, what is, and what might be. And so originally, this creature, this solar bear, sort of moved through the world, and it was illuminating these animals as they existed in their natural habitats, and then it would sort of move on. But as I kept going and kept thinking about it, it felt like these characters really wanted to span the entire book. And so as Solar Bear passed through each scene, they began to bring these sort of ethereal animals with them. And so the book runs through all these situations that are unfortunately unfolding on our planet right now. These are all vignettes based on environmental degradation, which is probably sadly occurring while we're chatting here today. I was really lucky to be able to call in some favors from some of my friends in the conservation community, like members of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature's Otter Specialist Group, which I somehow have managed to talk myself onto. I don't know how. I do not deserve to be in this group of wonderful otter researchers, but they were very kind to lend some of their thoughts. And so some of the scenes in this book were actually inspired by recommendations from groups working with those animals. So the otter here is shown in sort of a wildlife market, which is what unanimously all my colleagues in that group thought that should be shown to represent the threats facing otters. So here we have the animals going to visit our human protagonist and taking them out of the house and into this wilder landscape. And so here we sort of have the vision of maybe what once was and perhaps what could be. And we have our character running through this wild landscape. And I really wanted to capture the feeling of being in those wild places that I mentioned at the beginning. So one of the fun things that I was able to do was actually take some of my sketches from the road and incorporate them into the book. So here are drawings and paintings that I did in South Africa on a trip that I took with my brother recently. He's also a painter, so we had a lot of fun just sitting in a car for 2 weeks and painting animals. And this is at this incredible place in South Africa called Lupan, where all these animals were congregating around this watering hole. And this was one of those moments I was really filled with this sense of wonder and awe and excitement and peace, just watching these animals do what they've been doing for, millennia. And as we zoom in on the illustration we saw before, you can see where these sketches were actually incorporated into the background here. So it was a really nice opportunity for me to bring some of what I was experiencing out there in the wild and hopefully share that with a young audience. So this book continues, and I would love to tell you everything about every page, but I'm probably almost dangerously close to running out of time. But I will say that, we do visit this darker vision of what the world might look like if we cannot figure out how to get some of our actions as human beings under control. And so we do briefly spend some time in this sort of dystopian world. But I think one of the wonderful opportunities this book provided me, and I'm very grateful to Beth for doing so, is a chance to look forward with more optimism. I've been having a lot of conversations with friends in the conservation world and the climate world lately of what we do with hopelessness, what we do with despair, and I think one of the most important things, especially us kind of creative folks can be doing, is helping paint a picture of what a world might look like that does take a turn for the better. And so one of the things that I really love about Solar Bear, as it ends on this ends with this note of optimism, and shows that there is another path, and that as human beings we have it absolutely within our capabilities to bring a better world to be. And my hope is that Beth's wonderful book might be just one small piece of a conversation that starts to move things forward, as to what it could feel like to live in a wilder world where everyone kind of has access to these places that have creatures from all levels of the trophic cascade, kind of living life to the best of their ability. So anyway, I think I'm guessing I'm almost out of time here. Thank you for listening. I'll end with the final image we see, which is solar bear sleeping safe in the snow. And thank you again, everyone, for being here. And thanks, HarperCollins, for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, I think.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Brandon. You have truly illuminated a very important topic with your incredible illustrations. I want them like in my house. This is amazing. So thank you so much for being here. Hi, everyone. My name is Mimi Rankin. I'm the Associate Director of School and Library Marketing here at HarperCollins Children's Books. I'm thrilled to show off some more of our picture books coming out early next year. Next. Okay. 10 Little Rabbits. How lucky are we that we have essentially new Maurice Sendak in 2024? This was originally created for a fundraiser for the Rosenbach Museum, and now it's available for everyone as a hardcover picture book. This is a cherry on top for Sendak fans this year, as Where the Wild Things Are turns 60 next month. So hopefully we will all let the wild rumpus start. But if we go to the next slide, we can take a look at some of the spreads in 10 Little Rabbits. It's a really adorable counting book. That is a must-have on your shelves. Awesome. Thank you. Next, please. All right, then we have some new picture books from award-winning creators. First, we have Eyes That Weave the World's Wonders. From Paula Honoré and New York Times bestselling author Joanna Ho. This is the next Eyes, that book. This time Joanna is co-writing with author-educator Liz Kleinrock to celebrate Asian eyes through the lens of a transracial adoptee's experience, as Liz herself is a transracial adoptee from South Korea. This is yet another beautiful book that feels like a hug, and I definitely cried reading it. We also have Tomorrow's Lily, this exquisite and deeply moving picture book by two-time Caldecott medalist Chris Roshka, explores concepts of friendship, growing up, generosity, empathy, love, and time, and is a perfect gift book for readers of all ages, as well as a really great a bedtime book. And we also have Cranky from the #1 New York Times bestselling illustrator of the Food Group series, Pete Oswald. And this is from debut picture book author Phuc Tran. And this is a new picture book series that's Little Blue Truck meets Grumpy Monkey, starring a crane truck named Cranky and his friends from the construction site. Next slide, please. All right, and then we are thrilled to have the companion, a gorgeous companion to the Caldecott Honor-winning Nana in the City, and we have a video from Lauren Castillo.
My newest picture book is author and illustrator with you today. It's called Nana in the Country, and it is published by Clarion Books, which is an imprint of HarperCollins. So a bit of a backstory for you. I created the first Nana book, Nana in the City, when I was living in New York City over 10 years ago. It's this one. I can't believe it, but next year is actually the 10th anniversary of Nana in the City, which is wild. But since Nana in the City's publication, I've moved away from New York to a much quieter place. I'm now in central PA, central Pennsylvania. And here in Harrisburg, I'm surrounded by beautiful farmland and orchards. And this is basically what inspired the return to my characters, Nana and her grandson. Nana in the Country is a companion story to Nana in the City. And in this book, Nana is visiting her grandson's home in the country. So I actually took trips to Lancaster and I drew the landscape around me into the book. And I also Airbnb'd a small farmhouse to gather reference and inspiration for the boys' home. You can see here, this is the intro spread where you can see the full location that is featured in the book. So drawing from real locations is always very important to me as I'm creating artwork for picture books. It's just, it to me makes for the most like authentic surroundings and location, and it really feels as though it's a true place because I am drawing from a true place. So that's so as I did in Nana in the City, I wanted to do the same in Nana in the Country. And as some of you may know, the character of Nana was actually inspired by my own city living Nana. So while I was working on this new story, I returned to those childhood memories I have with her. Sadly, she passed away when I was working on the book, so I wasn't able to show her the final product, but I like to think she would have approved, and I really hope that you will enjoy it too. So once again, Nana in the Country, companion book to Nana in the City, and I hope you'll check it out. Thanks. Bye.
All right, I think we were a little out of sync there, but hopefully you got to hear the great words from Lauren. Okay, then next we have some really amazing picture book biographies about Black literary stars. So first we have Jimmy's Rhythm and Blues. This is the first ever illustrated biography for children of legendary writer, orator, activist, and intellectual James Baldwin in time for what would have been his 100th birthday. We also have A Crown of Stories. This is from award-winning author Carol Boston Weatherford, and it's a captivating picture book biography about the incredible life of esteemed author, editor, and activist Toni Morrison. And then this one is actually on, this next one is already available. This is Maya's Song. From award-winning creators Renee Watson and Brian Collier comes a stunningly crafted picture book chronicling the life of poet and activist Maya Angelou. Next, please. Okay, we have some more really amazing nonfiction picture books. We have A Grand Idea. From the author of Bartoli's Bicycle comes the inspiring true story of William J. Wilgus, the American civil engineer responsible for designing and constructing Grand Central Terminal. We also have Determined Dreamers. This is a comprehensive and accessible picture book biography of Marie Curie, the groundbreaking scientist and two-time Nobel Prize winner. I'm sure she was very peaceful. We also have I Am Osage, and this is from Heartdrum, our imprint that centers and uplifts Native voices. So I Am Osage is an inspiring biographical picture book about Clarence Tinker, a member of the Osage Nation, who served in the United States Air Force during World War II and became the first Native American Major General. We also have the Iguanodon's Horn, which is one of my favorites. It's so fascinating. This crowd-pleasing and engaging discussion of dinosaurs highlights the scientific process and the role of artists in science as it traces the way new discoveries deepen humankind's understanding of the world. It is very, very cool. Next, please. All right, so we have even more great picture books. When I Wrap My Hair is absolutely stunning. So this is an affirming lyrical picture book tribute to the pride in tradition and love from her ancestors one girl feels when she wraps her hair. We also have The Blue Pickup. This is a heartfelt intergenerational story about a young girl who loves fixing automobiles with her grandfather on the warm grounds of Jamaica. Natasha Triplett's debut picture book is a perfect pick for fans of My Puppy Has a Motorcycle, Saturday, and The Old Truck. We also have Circle of Love. This is also from Heartdrum. Two-Spirit author Monique Gray Smith, who is Cree and Lakota, writes about young Molly and her day spent at the Intertribal Community Center, a place where all are welcome and love is love. She's surrounded by her family and her diverse and loving community in this heartwarming picture book, brought to life in vibrant illustrations by Two-Spirit artist Nicole Neidhart, who is Danae. We also have Spider in the Well, which is absolutely hilarious. Author illustrator Jess Hannigan makes her debut with a strikingly illustrated and darkly hilarious picture book about a young newsboy sent to the forest wishing well to uncover what might be blocking the town's wishes, only to discover a spider and its web have been intercepting wishes and collecting gold coins for itself, which is just hilarious. This is perfect for fans of John Klassen, Ryan Higgins, and also fans of stylized cinema from Orson Welles to Wes Anderson. So I think that's it for me, but as a reminder, you can read all of these full picture books on Edelweiss by clicking content and then links if you want to take a look. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mimi. Okay, we are going to switch categories and move over to YA. And we're going to start with an author talk. And I'm really happy to introduce you to debut author Toni Keith Jr. Toni is an American poet, spoken word artist, and hip hop educational leader from Washington, D.C. A multi-year fellow of the D.C. Commission of the Arts and Humanities with a PhD in education from George Mason U. Tony is CEO of Ed MC Academy and lives with his husband in his D.C. hometown. His debut YA memoir in verse, How the Boogeyman Became a Poet, follows his journey from being a closeted high school teen terrified of the boogeyman to embracing his true self through poetry. What an incredible new talent you are going to meet. Please help me welcome Tony Keith Jr.
Yay! Was such a wonderful introduction. Hi, everybody out there in the world. I'm going to share my screen and get started. This is so exciting. I published a book. Okay. So what you see on the screen. So first of all, Mimi was hit that right on the head. I mean, not Mimi, Patty. It is a young adult memoir written in verse. And it's about three sort of specific kinds of things. It's about one, how I came out of the closet as gay, how I became a first-generation college student, and how I discovered my poetic voice all along that journey, and how important poetry was for me. And I just want to sort of like quickly share a couple things, just first about the cover, because there's a story to this cover about even like how this book sort of came to be. And so on the advanced readers edition, there's a picture on the front of this of the main cover of me on a microphone. That picture was taken when I was in college, but that picture was taken by a gentleman that I think the world might know, Jason Reynolds. We went to college together and were poets at school together. And so I was performing at some event he was hosting, and he sent me that picture, and I still have it. But that picture is no longer on the cover, but that's how far back sort of this thing with poetry and writing for me goes. And I want to share that. The other thing that's really cool about this cover, y'all, is besides the fact that it's my favorite color, blue, is in this book, I do have a girlfriend. I should probably provide some context. This story takes place between spring 1999 and about fall 2000. So we're going, just late 90s, right? I'm about 17 years old, senior year of high school, trying to figure out like how I'm going to get to college. This is also like, for me, like the rise of like hip hop, at least 90s hip hop. I was an 80s baby. And so, so you'll notice like there's a really good blend of like hip hop and poetry and stuff from that time embedded in this. But this was also a time before cell phones, right? Before, the internet was just sort of kind of getting itself together. And so how could I figure out, myself, in a time where I was, discovering I was gay. And so anyway, so in this book, I have a girlfriend, right? And I have a girlfriend, and the book, her name is Blue. And what's interesting, you all, when Blue and I, we have a very complicated relationship in this book. And Blue and I are still friends to this very, very day, and in fact is an artist here in Washington, D.C., and believe it or not, created this cover art. So what you see is created by the person who is the girlfriend in my book. And so that's a very special thing for me. So again, to see Jason's blurb and then to have Blue's artwork on the cover, I just want y'all to know that that cover came from a very special place because this book is very much about me. It's in hip hop, we call it the fifth element, which is knowledge of self, which I'll get to soon. But in this book, fun things that you'll see is clearly there's photographs of little me. There's like little Tony right there in the middle. And it is written in verse. And I should say that I do in this book talk about topics that I don't talk specifically about them, but I make really good inferences to them, right? But I talk about being a kid growing up, not really knowing what racism meant, not knowing what homophobia meant. I didn't have language back then, so I would describe things as a kid in as many kind of clever ways as possible. And so what you see at the top of that page above this picture is a brief little snippet from, my parents told me when I was a kid that I was born with a puck. And a puck had knowledge in it, like I had a big head. And so as a kid, I was sort of describing what I thought a puck was. And it sort of ends with, people playing hockey, but I say until some black, white, striped skinned person with authority blows a whistle before the brawl begins, right? And so there's a discussion in there kind of sort of about racism and fighting and knowledge and what does it mean to be black and brilliant? Because in this book, that's what I write about being afraid of. The boogeyman, obviously, operates as a metaphor in this book. Other things that you all should probably know about this book is it is written in verse. I chose this particular writing style on purpose, mainly because it reflects just my natural way of knowing and writing. I do not have an MFA or anything. I've just been writing and performing poetry since I was a little kid, and we'll talk more about that. But I mentioned hip hop and knowledge of self. And so one of these little sections in the book is about knowledge of self. And it says, the history of who I am explains how I came to be a 17-year-old senior at Duval High, where our mascot, the Bengal tiger, is the largest living cat species, although I can barely stretch my body out from beyond this 5-foot, 4-inch brown border. Duval High swallows a corner block of a busy intersection in Atlanta, Maryland, in Prince George's County, Greenland partially circling around the first ring suburbs of the diamond-shaped District of Columbia. For real, I don't think I'm built like most of the other Black boys here. I weigh in at about 120 pounds, soaking wet with all my clothes on. I don't feel like my shoulders are strong enough to stand on, nor can I puff my chest out enough to appear as large as I believe I am. And no, I'm not going to read anymore, maybe a little bit later. But I wrote this in this particular way on purpose because you all should know, I am the debut author, yay, of a young adult book, but I honestly did not start reading as an adult, and I'm 42 years old. I know I look great. I didn't start reading until I was like in my early 30s, and it's actually after I read Jason Reynolds' When I Was the Greatest. I was like, oh, wait a minute, you mean to tell me like I could be an adult reading books like this? And I got drawn deeply into just sort of like writing language that was sort of like fun and playful and creative and imaginative. And so that's where this came from. And I got another connection about the came from, but I don't want to take up too much of my time telling y'all all these stories, unless you like them, because I can tell more stories. Anyway, but this idea of knowledge of self really went into this book. Other things that went into this book too. So I kept the poetry that I wrote as a kid and photocopied some of them and put them in this book. And shout out to the wonderful folks at HarperCollins for like making the actual like text out of them and restructuring them for me. But so what you all will see in this book is when I refer to the boogeyman, it's definitely a metaphor, but I'll let you figure out what that metaphor is. And in order for me to sort of deal with that, in order for me to wrestle with what was going on, what I was feeling, I would write poetry. Right? Like that's how I dealt with my emotions as a kid. And again, I didn't take like a poetry class. This was like it was just a natural way of thinking. I, could come from hip hop music, coming from rap, right? Like learning poetic style, right? But some of that was just natural. And I would write poetry to myself when I was sad and I was confused. I would get bullied. I write about being bullied in this book and beat up and called punks and sissies and faggots. And you know what I'm saying? Growing up as a poor Black boy in DC, man, there was a lot going on. And so I would write these poems. And so in there I have and actually it's funny because I still have them still. Like I've had these since I was 13, 14. And so you'll see those throughout the book, which I'm really excited about. The other thing that you'll see within this book, and then I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, is in the prologue, you'll get a poem, and the very last line is sort of how the title of this book came to be. And it says, for those who hush when they should command, for those who hush, oh, halfway, 2 minutes. Okay, good, thanks. For those who hush when they should command, for those who need to realize you can't hide in the light, it sticks to you like brown does on my Black skin, like sap from trees rooted in sweet soil. You need to see that you are a star. I literally see you in the sky, defying laws of space-time and gravity, because humans are not supposed to fly, but you glide like the first leaf in autumn. Your silhouette struts in daylight and dances with the moon. You are part of a collective, a critical mass of intellectuals governed by divine knowledge, which means you are meant to be here with a purpose. Just like I am meant to be here with a purpose, we are purposefully meant to be here so that the sick can become a healer, so that the timid can become a leader, so that the weary can become a teacher, and so that the boogeyman can become a poet. And I think I have 1 minute left. And so you all should know that I wrote that poem in 2010, maybe 2011, after one of my dear friends was just calling me, just saying negative things about himself. And I was like, I got to write a poem for him. Come to find out that poem was for me. And I wound up performing that poem at Washington National Cathedral in 2012 at a Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebration. And I performed it in concert with audio excerpts from one of Dr. King's sermons. It's on YouTube. Look it up. Anyway, so I had that title before I had this book. And so that's how the boogeyman became a poet is. I'm a full-time poet now, and I'm married, right, to a man. Like I'm like openly gay. So I like found all the joy. And this book lets you know a little bit nugget about what happened between 1999 and 2000 that made all that come true. I think I'm done.
I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but I could spend the next hour, 2 hours listening to you, Tony. Thank you so much for, for sharing your story and your energy and your book. And I mean, I think that we're all with you at the beginning of what is going to be a really amazing career. I mean, we're so psyched. So thank you so much. If anyone has questions for Tony or Brendan or Catherine, you can ask them at the end if we have any time as well. Okay, I am going to pop in and tell you about some other teen titles that we've got coming early next year. The first one is Everything I Learned About Racism, I Learned in School. Great title, important topic, amazing author. From preschool to higher education and everything in between, Everything I Learned About Racism, I Learned in School focuses on the experiences Black and Brown students face as a direct result of the racism built into school systems across the US. The overarching nonfiction narrative follows author Tiffany Jewell from early elementary school through her time at college, and it unpacks the history of systematic racism in the American ed system along the way. Throughout the book, other writers of the global majority share a wide variety of personal narratives and stories based on their own school experiences. I think this book provides young people with the context to think really critically about and chart their own courses through their current schooling and any future schooling that they may wish to pursue. Tiffany, just as a reminder, is the Black biracial #1 New York Times bestselling author of This Book is Anti-Racist and The Anti-Racist Kid. Next slide, please, Grace. So here we have new books by 3 returning award-winning authors. First up is Fox Maiden. This is Robin Ha's follow-up to her national bestseller and award-winning book, Almost American Girl. That was a Walter Award honoree and a Harvey Award finalist. It was also on lots of sort of best of the year, end of year lists. This one is a queer feminist retelling of a well-known Korean folktale. The legend of the Fox Maiden is well known throughout the Asian diaspora. Robin reimagines the Korean version of the myth with her own empowering twists. There's a lot to dig into here with epic fantasy and romance, themes of feminism, autonomy, class, and being true to yourself. I also think it's noteworthy to mention that Robin has taken her artwork to a whole nother level with this graphic novel. And she also shares a really great author's note where she talks about her own personal connection to the Fox Maidens in her own attempt to grapple with generational trauma that many Korean women have experienced as a result of patriarchy and Under This Red Rock. This is Mindy McGinnis's mesmerizing psychological mystery. It follows a teen girl who's grappling with the death of her brother as she starts a new job in the caverns of Ohio, only to become the #1 suspect in the coworker's murder. I think this is perfect for readers of Courtney Summers and Kathleen Glasgow. And as only Mindy McGinnis can, she blends a slow burn thriller, complex character studies, and really good writing. The book also does include a deft exploration of mental health, a plot with a really sharp turn, and an unreliable narrator who is impossible not to root for. Mindy is really a master of this form. If you haven't read her before, pick this one up, take a peek. And then Kindling. This is Tracy Chee's standalone fantasy set against a war-ravaged world where kindling warfare, that is the use of elite magic-wielding teenage soldiers, this kind of warfare has been outlawed. In this evocative novel, 7 kindlings search for purpose and identity as they prepare for one final battle. Kindling reimagines the Japanese film Seven Samurai with a feminist bent, a group of magical female and non-binary warriors charged with protecting the local village. Like her previous novel, 1,000 Steps Into Night, Tracy combines YA fantasy magic that made her a New York Times bestseller with the inspiration from her Japanese heritage that made her book, We Are Not Free, so powerful. And the next slide, please. Here we have a couple of new contemporary YA novels. First up is Shut Up, This Is Serious. Belaine Dolores Itzel del Toro wants the normal stuff. She wants to experience love, maybe have a boyfriend, or at least just lose her virginity. But nothing's normal in East Oakland. Her father left her family. She's at risk of not graduating. And Letty, her super Catholic, nerdy best friend, is pregnant by the boyfriend she hasn't told her parents about because he's Black and her parents are racist. Things are complicated. Weighed down by a depression she can't seem to shake, Belen helps Letty, hangs out with an older guy, and cuts a lot of classes. She soon realizes that distractions are only temporary. Letty is becoming a mother. Classmates are getting ready for college. But what about Belen? What future is there for a girl like her? A daughter of Mexican immigrants, author Carolina Ixta is a bilingual 5th grade teacher based in Berkeley. Shut Up, This Is Serious is her debut novel. And a few days ago, we got our first review in from our friends at Kirkus, and it was a star. And that last line says, this addictively readable novel is a loving portrait of growing up Mexican-American and female in Oakland, a stunning debut from a powerful new voice. We love reviews like that. Next book on this slide is Icarus. I think this is good for fans of Adam Silvera and Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, book that we all love. This is suspenseful queer YA romance from critically acclaimed author Kay Ancrum. It reimagines the tale of Icarus as a star-crossed love story between a young art thief and the son of the man he's been stealing from. And then we have Dark Parts of the Universe. This is Outer Banks meets Bone Gap in New York Times bestselling author Samuel Miller's propulsive and genre-bending YA mystery. It follows a group of teenagers who discover a dead body while playing an app-based adventure game, which sends players to random locations, unlocking a much deeper mystery about their small town. The novel is written by a rock star author, literally a rock star author. Sam is the former singer-songwriter of the band Paradise Fears. Next slide, please. I'm going to tell you about a couple of romance titles. First is Escaping Mr. Rochester. This is a fresh imagining of Bronte's classic novel. Here, Jane Eyre and Bertha Mason, Mr. Rochester's wife, whom he's imprisoned within the house for years, as we all know, they must save each other from the horrifying machinations of Mr. Rochester in this intrigue-filled, empowering Black queer young adult romance. And then What Monstrous Gods from Rosamund Hodge. Here she's returning to her fairy tale roots. Rosamund's first 2 books that I loved, Crimson Tide and the New York Times bestselling Cruel Beauty, they took their inspiration from Little Red Riding Hood and then Beauty and the Beast, respectively. So Rosamund's going back, and she's looking at another fairy tale in What Monstrous Gods, and this one is Sleeping Beauty, one story that we all sort of love to hear. So while it takes initial inspiration from Sleeping Beauty, it's as Rosamund does, she spins off into other places. There's gloriously dark, romantic, and thought-provoking magic here. And I think that this is really great for Rosamund's own fans, as well as readers of Marissa Meyer, Chloe Gong, and Kristen Kishore. And then we have Dragon Fruit. This is from acclaimed author Maciej Lucier. It's a dazzling romantic fantasy inspired by Pacific Islander mythology, which I think is noteworthy because there's not a lot of books about Pacific Islander people, mythology, stories. So that's certainly noteworthy to me. So back to Dragon Fruit. In order to return to her homeland and save her kingdom, exiled Hanalei reunites with her childhood best friend to track down a rare sea dragon egg, or a dragon fruit, whose magic is said to grant any wish. But as we know, as readers of fiction know, every wish comes with a price, and Hanalei must decide what she's willing to sacrifice for her own kingdom. Another thing to note here, aside from the Pacific Islander representation, is this is a good book, I think, for readers who like lighter fantasy without that really long page count and like really complicated world building, which some of us really love, but some of us don't. So I think this is great for those readers who are sort of like a little bit of a lighter fantasy. Okay, last but not least, these are next books in series or finales in series that your patrons have been waiting for. The first one is Victoria Aveyard. This is the final installment in the Realm Breaker series. Amazing. Victoria, continues to just write amazing, popular books that teens really clamor for. All This Twisted Glory. This is Tahira Mafi picking up at the explosive cliffhanger ending from These Infinite Threads, many of you may remember. This is the 3rd installment in an epic romantic fantasy series based on Persian folklore. And then our friend Adam Silvera, this is his 3rd and final book in the Infinity Cycle series, in which Emil, the Infinity Son, and Brighton, the Infinity Reaper, face off in the ultimate battle. I think that's it for teen books, right? Yes. Okay, good. So thank you for listening. For those, check them out. Again, they're in Edelweiss and NetGalley. Okay. So now we're going to talk about middle grade, and I am going to introduce Catherine Applegate, our last speaker today. Catherine is a leading middle grade voice of this century with over 100 beloved books that have sold over 35 million copies. You know her as the Newbery Medal winning author of numerous books for young readers, including The One and Only Ivan, the Endling series, Crenshaw, Wish Tree, and the Animorphs series. Next May, Catherine returns to the world of our favorite silverback in the bittersweet conclusion to the One and Only series with The One and Only Family. This final book in the series will give readers the chance to learn more about Ivan's life before the Mall Circus in this full circle conclusion to the series that has touched literally millions of fans of all ages. We are beyond thrilled to welcome the one and only Catherine Applegate.
Oh, wow. That was quite an introduction. Thank you, Patty. And I have to tell you, hearing Brendan and Tony talk about their books, I can already feel my credit card getting a workout because they sound marvelous. So this is quite a list you all have put together. Give me a minute. We'll pull up my presentation here. I have to admit that I'm finding this a little bittersweet. That was the perfect word to use. Let me pull this up. You don't want to see all that, do you? I think you just want to see this. Sorry, of course, it always works in practice. One moment. It's there. I see it. I'll do it this way. All righty. The thing about this last book, and it is bittersweet for me, is that I never thought there would be any books in this series. I really didn't imagine that The One and Only Ivan would ever even come to fruition. This is my my author photo, and you can see this okay. Am I correct? Good. Okay. I always show this to kids when I do school visits because I think it's so important for kids to understand that there is a lot of rewriting to writing, and there's a lot of mistake making, and you need a huge delete key and you need a big eraser because writing is complicated. And when I went to write The One and Only Ivan, it died many, many, many times and ended up in the trash at least once. And I always tell kids this because I think it's important to know that you have to stick with stories that really, really mean something to you. I never dreamed that I would end up writing about Ivan's family, that it would come so completely full circle. But it was lovely to revisit all our friends, Julia, who is sweet and kind, and Ruby, who is still silly and young and effervescent, and of course, Bob, who is Bob, relentlessly sarcastic. The first page of the original book, The One and Only Ivan, starts out this way. Hello, I am Ivan, I'm a gorilla. It's not as easy as it looks. And the first page of the finale, starts this way. Hello, I am Ivan. I'm about to become a dad. I'm hoping it's as easy as it looks. Well, no. Ivan has shall we say, a steep learning curve ahead of him. The raising of a baby gorilla, is every bit as complicated in its own ways as the raising of a human baby. And he and his constant companion, Kenyani, and there really was a Kenyani, by the way, end up having twins. So their already complicated lives are made even more complicated by this fact, and by the fact that because of a storm that had damaged much of the park that they're now living in, they're all by themselves. They don't have a troop to support them. So they're relying heavily on humans to help them understand what it means to be parents. Now, I think a lot of you probably know the backstory to Ivan. I'll just run through it briefly because it's important to where this story comes full circle. Ivan, there really was an Ivan. He was part of a family that was poached in the Democratic Republic of the Congo in the mid-60s. We think the rest of the family was killed, and only Ivan and another baby survived. They ended up here at a mall called B&I in Tacoma, Washington, still in existence. You can see Ivan's picture there at the very top. And he started out living as a human. Ivan and Burma appeared to be twins. They were captured together, and unfortunately, Burma, the female, died almost as soon as she arrived in Tacoma of pneumonia, not surprisingly, given the stress of the voyage. But Ivan did survive and thrive, and he went on to live with humans for quite a while, and just created utter havoc no matter where he went, because gorillas are quite strong. Eventually, he ended up in this weird, tacky mall in a cage, and he stayed there for 27 years. And it was a very, very sad existence. And it was one that I decided I wanted to document. At first, I tried to tell it as straightforward narrative as I could, as close to the facts. But I realized in order to write first person gorilla, I was going to have to fictionalize a bit. There he is en route to Zoo Atlanta, where he lived out the rest of his days. And he was around Western lowland gorillas for the first time in almost 3 decades. So he had to kind of relearn how to be a gorilla. So that was his backstory in essence. And I took that little bit, the prospect that he was in fact a twin. It's possible, by the way, twins in Western lowland gorilla populations are relatively rare. It's possible that the female gorilla he was captured with might have been an orphan, because gorilla troops will take in orphaned babies. But we think she was a twin, and I decided to use that as my takeoff point, as so often happens when you're writing a story. You know, you have that little bit that sticks in your head, and the idea of Ivan grown up and hopefully happy and raising twins was just irresistible. And in part, that's because baby gorillas are in fact irresistible, as you will see from some of these photos. They are every bit as rambunctious and energetic and intelligent as humans, and they play the same games that humans play. They play tag, they play hide and seek. One of my favorite little videos on the internet is a toddler gorilla on one side of the glass at a zoo and a little toddler boy on the other, and they're playing hide and seek, back and forth and back and forth. And it's just miraculous to see how much the same they really are. I've been very lucky in that I've developed a friendship with this woman, Jody Kerrigan, who is a primatologist at Zoo Atlanta and was Ivan's best friend for many, many years. That's a statue at Point Defiance Zoo of Ivan, where he was briefly located. And Jody took me behind the scenes wearing, a mask and gown and the whole 9 yards to hang out with some of these toddlers. And it was absolutely hilarious. They are every bit as annoying as 2-year-olds anywhere, and every bit as hilarious. It was like being at a really badly run nursery school, and everybody fighting for attention. And it was absolutely a wonderful experience because it helped me understand what Ivan and Kenyani might actually have been going through. Now, in real life, Ivan, by the way, as far as we know, did not father any kids. So we have eased our way into total fictional territory here. But he did have a beau named Kenyani, and she is very much a part of the story too, obviously, as the mom is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. I found this book harder to write than I did The One and Only Bob or The One and Only Ruby. And I think that's because in part, each of those characters had very, very distinct voices. Ivan was, calm and poetic and intelligent, and Ruby was kind of crazed and innocent and absolutely delightful. And Bob was Bob. He was sardonic. He was, there's only one Bob unless you're Danny DeVito, who, by the way, read the audiobook for The One and Only Bob and did a wonderful job. So it was a little bit easier to write them and to get into those very distinctive voices. But I found returning to Ivan's story a little heart-wrenching, because I had to think about what it would be like to be a parent and to know that your kids are facing a world where they will never be wild. What do you tell them? How far do you go? What stories are safe to tell? And I found myself very much thinking about a topic that we've been unfortunately dealing with a lot the last couple of years. Who curates stories? Who tells kids what? How much is it safe to tell kids? How dark can you go with a story? And how light can you go with a story? And much of this novel, as it evolved, became me trying to decide what Ivan could tell his kids and how he would tell his kids. And it reminded me very much of when Brendan was talking about conservation issues, because I've come up against that often when I'm doing school visits, that question of how much you tell kids, how do you stay hopeful, how do you stay optimistic? One thing I try to do when I'm talking to young writers, and that's me in younger era, two things actually: embrace your weird and write mad. And I hope that I have done both those things in this last and final book. I think it's very important for kids to know that the best writing comes from sometimes the most idiosyncratic parts of yourself. There's such pressure to be like everybody else, especially in middle school and high school. And when you can hang on to that little glimmer of yourself that's different, that looks at the world differently, that's when you get a good writer, and that's when you find a good story. And the other thing I've noticed is that some of I think the books I'm proudest of are books where the catalyst was something that really outraged me. I wrote The One and Only Ivan because I read a story in the New York Times about his life, and I was shocked, horrified. I wrote Wish Tree, a book about tolerance and a Muslim family that has moved into a new neighborhood, because I'd read about a family, I think it was in Kansas, who just moved into their home and had a big note on their door that said, "Go away." And I was mad. So I think sometimes when your students are struggling with what to write about, ask them what makes them mad, ask them what makes them passionate, because so often that's where our very, very best stories come from. And I really hope that I was able to do that with this one. I have one final thing I want to add. This is Mrs. Gray. Mrs. Gray was my third grade teacher, and I did not like to read. I did not like to read at all until Mrs. Gray read our class, Charlotte's Web. And it was life transforming. Mrs. Gray, I'm sure, did not know that I went on to become a voracious reader, let alone a writer. But she changed my life in that moment when she opened that book. And I want you all to remember that, because I know there are so many librarians and teachers and booksellers and parents listening. Sometimes you don't get to see the profound effect you have on another human being. Mrs. Gray changed my life. And there's a moment in The One and Only Family where Ivan says, as he gets older, he seems to notice more and more miracles. And I am finding that it's very true myself. And I look back, I know that Mrs. Gray was a miracle in my life. And I truly feel the chance to be able to tell Ivan's story is another miracle. So thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Catherine. And I know that all of our readers, young and old, are very much looking forward to, but also sad that this series is ending. Thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Christina, and I'm a marketing coordinator on the team, and I have the difficult task of following up Catherine and talking to you about our amazing middle grade books. We're excited to bring you the next title in the Zora Neale Hurston program. Barracoon is the story of Cujo Lewis, an 86-year-old man who recounted the story of his capture and bondage to the legendary Zora Neale Hurston. In this edition, readers will hear about his childhood in Africa, his capture, and the years he spent as a slave, adapted with age-appropriate historical context from award-winning historian Ibram X. Kendi. This is a necessary addition to history classrooms and library collections where first-person narratives for this age group about this time period are scarce or non-existent. Next slide. We have another nonfiction for you, Made in Asian America. 3-time Newbery honoree Christina Soontorn-Bhatt and award-winning historian Erica Lee have joined forces to create a nonfiction middle grade book highlighting generations of Asian Americans who have shaped our country. This accessible book features familiar names alongside everyday heroes and an inspiring message that's compounded by stories of youth activists fighting for AAPI history to be taught in schools today. Next slide. From the Newbery winner, Erin Entrada Kelly, we have The First State of Being. When a mysterious boy named Ridge from the future shows up in an apartment complex in Delaware on the eve of Y2K, Michael's life is upended. He has been spending months stockpiling supplies ahead of what he thinks is an impending disaster, and when he finds out Ridge has a book detailing the events of the next 20 years, he needs it. But how far is he willing to go? This is a smart, fast-paced, standalone sci-fi that will appeal to Erin's existing readers, but also draw in new fans. Next slide. The amazing Lois Lowry, Tree Table book. In this, the two Sophies may have been born in different centuries, but they are best friends and don't let their age gap get in the way. But when the elder Sophie begins to struggle with her memory, young Sophie is determined to help. This moving tale of intergenerational friendship explores the power and fleeting nature of memories and the stories we pass on from generation to generation. Next slide. Everything is changing for Violet, whose mom remarried and brought a baby brother into the world. They need a new home, but did it need to be this one? Violet moves into her new creepy attic room with its faded yellow wallpaper with hesitancy and soon grows ill. The more time she spends alone in her room feeling sick, the more she wonders if she's alone at all. Anne Ursu was inspired by the short story The Yellow Wallpaper to write this haunting tale of self-advocacy based off of her own experiences with chronic illness. Next slide. Here we have some middle grade that you just can't miss from favorite authors. Slugfest is the newest from Gordon Corman, and in it, a group of 8th graders can't graduate without attending phys ed summer school. In classic Corman style, this is a heartwarming and hilarious book about a group of misfits coming together for a common cause. Rajani Laraka, the award-winning writer of Red, White, and Whole, tackles colonialism through a truly magical lens in Sona and the Golden Beasts. Imagine a world without music and you have Devia. Since it was conquered by the Malek centuries ago, music has been outlawed to prevent the Devans from using their magic. But then why can Sona, a Malek descendant, hear music everywhere she goes? And then by Kayla Carter, The World Divided by Piper. Piper Franklin has been taking shots to keep puberty at bay since she was 6 and diagnosed with early onset puberty. But now she's 11 and it's time for the shots to stop, and Piper isn't ready to grow up. Filled with frustration at the patriarchy, an intense academic decathlon, and lots of middle school angst and friendship, there's a lot to love in this one. Next slide. We have some serious books that don't shy away from big emotions. Between Two Brothers is by the wonderful Crystal Allen. And Isaiah has always worshipped his older brother, Seth, who's about to start his senior year of high school. But when the two get into a fight and Seth is in an accident which leaves him hospitalized, Ice is racked by guilt and fear. Inspired by real events, this is Crystal Allen's most personal book to date. And while there are quite a few moments that will have you reaching for the tissues, it's ultimately a book about hope and the power of family love. And Kira, just for today, is another one that will have you reaching for the tissues. Kira often worries she's too much, but her mother, who's been sober for 5 years, and her weekly support group with the children of alcoholics, and her best friend Lou help her get by. Until 7th grade, when suddenly Lou has some new friends and mom becomes unusually distant, missing work and forgetting things. Author Sarah Zarr does an expert job bringing sensitivity and hope to this difficult topic in a way that's accessible for middle grade readers. And next slide. Here, we just wanted to highlight some new books coming out in paperback. We have Nick Blake and the Remarkables, Manifest or Prophecy, which is the first book in a fantasy series by the amazing Angie Thomas. A Rover Story, which was a global read aloud pick this year, has wide appeal. It's a great book club choice, and that's going to be available in paperback. And Verano Loco is One Crazy Summer, now available in Spanish. You Are Here has 6-star reviews, and this collection of stories is definitely worth a spot in your collection. And then finally, The Circuit, Francisco Jimenez's memoir about his life as a child migrant worker in California, is now adapted into a graphic novel.
Thanks, Christina. And thank you to our speakers, Brendan and Tony and Catherine. What a way to end a very long week. I had a very long week. I don't know if you all did too. I think your talks were really inspiring. And a through line, it seems like, from all of the talks is, how do we stay hopeful and optimistic in these times? And I think that's on all of our minds, and those of us who work with kids or have kids are thinking about that, even more. And I think your books and your stories are certainly one way to start in that direction, to try to remain hopeful and optimistic. So thank you. And thank you to our book loving friends for being with us today. Please remember to check out our Edelweiss collection to see other exciting books coming early next year. If you have any questions, Mimi has nominated herself as the person that you can email directly with any questions about these books or others, or anything Harper related, really. Thanks a million. Thank you to our friends at Booklist. As always, we love partnering with you on these previews. And just a shout out for our social. We have lots of good stuff that we share on Twitter and Facebook and in our newsletter. So sign up for those if you haven't already. And now I think I'm going to hand it over to Sarah for some closing thoughts from Booklist. Thanks a million.
Thank you so much, Patty. Thank you to Tony, Catherine, Brendan, and the entire HarperStax team. It was such a wonderful preview. It's always a treat to hear about your upcoming titles. On Monday, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's video recording, title list, slide presentation, and a certificate of completion. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit www.booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. Between January 1st and August 31st, 2023, ALA's Office for Intellectual Freedom documented challenges to 1,915 unique titles, an increase of 20% from the same reporting period in 2022. Join the fight to help protect the freedom to read by supporting the Unite Against Book Bans campaign, and visit their website, uniteagainstbookbans.org, for resources, toolkits, merchandise to donate, and more. And remember that you can utilize Booklist to support your library's collection development choices with reviews backed by the ALA. We have a special webinar subscription offer, and don't forget that your subscription dollars help ALA advocate on behalf of libraries, assisting those facing an unprecedented number of book challenges. Email us at info@booklistonline.com for more information. Attention booksellers. Booklist Reader showcases books your customers can purchase from your store today. In addition to sharing from your website, you can now distribute print copies to your visitors. Scan the QR code on the screen or visit our website to order copies for your store today. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. One more huge thank you to our special author and illustrator guests, and to our sponsor, HarperCollins Children's Books. This concludes today's webinar. See you next time.